Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Director Planning.
Here.
And Director Josie.
Here.
Chair Howard, so let me see if he's not here as of right now, so he's absent. Vice Chair Brown.
Here.
We have four.
Thank you. Meeting open to the public. This is where members of the audience can speak on something within the responsibilities of our organization. Seeing no members of the public, do we have anybody calling in?
We don't have any attendees via Zoom. I didn't get anything through email as well, and we don't have anybody here for public today.
Okay, we'll close the meeting open to the public and move on. So a quick moment to see if Supervisor Hubbard will be joining us. Appears not at this time, so hopefully later. We'll move on to minutes of the October 23rd meeting for the Public and Services Committee. Do we have any questions or comments by members? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second. A motion made and seconded. Could we take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Director Browning.
Aye.
Director Josie.
Aye.
And Chair Howard is still absent. Vice Chair Brown.
Yes, aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Could we have a staff presentation on zero emissions bus transition update? Let's say transportation, transit, but transition.
And yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye on my phone because Supervisor Calder is typing, or maybe I'll have Jennifer kind of keep an eye on that. Thank you, Chair Brown, Christy Wagoner, your Executive Director here, joined by Jennifer Yeamans. We are going to give you an update on our plans to transition to zero emissions buses. The last update that we provided to this committee was in April, where we gave you an update on our plans for Atlantis and our plans to convert to hydrogen technology beginning in fiscal 25. So really today, this is almost a preview of what you will be seeing in your fiscal 25 budget. We are here to talk to you today specifically about our transition plans for the buses. We are not here to present an update on Atlantis, although we are looking under every couch cushion for all the money to fund that facility. And this really is a strategic discussion. We want to make sure you know how we are.
I'm not sure if this is. Okay, David, but let's see.
Should I pause then so we can take a vote for him?
He's got his hand
Yeah,
up.
we will need to.
Is this David? Can you unmute for a second?
He's in the waiting room.
David? Can you hear us?
I'm here.
All right.
Yes, I can.
Okay, if we could pause on our presentation and we'll need to take a vote that AB 2449 requires a remote call-in from one of our members. I'd like to see if we have a majority of those present. Do we have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Second, we have a motion made and seconded. Verbal vote, all those in favor? Aye.
Can we take a verbal vote or do we have?
No, we have to do it.
But he doesn't get to vote. So everyone present is here for a verbal vote. That's where I was one step ahead of you there.
You know your rules.
Well, nobody's perfect, that's for sure. But we have a full 3-0 vote in favor of exercising AB 2449 and including Supervisor Hubbard into our meeting. Thank you. Welcome, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
We're starting our agenda presentation, so go right ahead.
Great, thank you. Hi Supervisor Hobart. I was just introducing the zero emissions bus transition update and was sharing with the committee that this is really an exciting time, first of all, because we will be making our first zero emissions bus purchase in fiscal 25. But this is really a preview of what you will expect in your fiscal 25 budget process. And we're going to talk through our strategy, our funding strategy to meet our zero emissions bus plans. So by way of background, in 2018, the California Air Resource Board finalized its innovative clean transit mandate, which required all transit agencies to be zero emissions by 2040. They had a different schedule for small versus large operators. Small operators are required to begin purchasing these vehicles starting in fiscal 26. And 25% of vehicles purchased in 26 must be zero emissions. That scaled up to 100% in 2029, January 2029. The LAVTA board approved an ICT plan, which is a plan for how you will achieve your zero emission status by 2040. The plan was approved by this board in April of 22. The plan calls for hydrogen fuel cell technology as your preferred technology and calls to replace 100% of our diesel or diesel hybrid buses beginning in fiscal 25. This is 1 year ahead of the ICT requirement. I just want to point that out. So we will be early adopters. The other thing I will point out is that you also adopted shortly after your ICT plan, your short range transit plan, which is a more fiscally constrained transit plan. It also does have a capital improvement plan included. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer now, she's going to speak about our funding strategy.
Before you turn it over to Jennifer, I just have a clarifying question. The staff report states that all new purchases and then 26 and 29, 100% of new purchases, not complete fleet changes.
Correct. It is a rolling
But
implementation.
if you never bought a bus, you would not have to buy zero emission. But these are purchases. So when you stated that that by, I think it was 2029, you'll have 100% of all buses in use, but really that's not the requirement for my ICT.
No, and I think I misspoke. Yeah,
Okay, I just
it's
wanted
only,
to be clear.
of the buses, we are scheduled to buy 12 buses in fiscal 25. We are scheduled to buy 20 buses in fiscal 28 and another 20 in fiscal 29. So you're correct. If we stick with our plan, we will be 100% zero emissions by 2034.
2030.
So we will have replaced all of our diesel or diesel hybrid buses with zero emissions technology if we follow our ICT plan.
Because that's our plan, not state requirement.
Correct. And yet we would still be 6 years in advance of the state.
Got it. All right, thank you for the
Thank you.
clarification. Jennifer.
Okay, sure. Well, now I can't remember where you left off. If I restate things, I apologize.
Thank you.
So, the ICT rollout plan was a CARB mandated plan, and I think the main thing it did is it helped us identify the preferred technology, and it also created basically a needs assessment of what will it cost to make all this happen for when buses are procured. So the full transition happens by 2040, because by then we will have procured all of the zero emission buses by then that we would need to meet that by 2040. Then the short range transit plan with the capital improvement program was more fiscally constrained, looking more like the revenues that we know are actually headed our way. Most of that for our bus purchases, as you may know, comes from federal formula funding, from surface transportation funding that is for basically state of good repair, replace your buses when they're 12 years old, keep the system operating, and then harmonize our operating needs with our capital needs through this plan. So that plan, looking more at the revenue side, called for a mix in our next bus purchase of 4 fuel cell electric buses and 8 diesel electric hybrids. And again, with the harmonizing of our capital and operating needs goes with this. We know that right now in the current market, the cost of operating hydrogen fuel cell buses is very high. We know also there have been big fluctuations in the price of diesel in the last couple of years that have really impacted our budget. It's a big part of our annual operating budget that you well know if you looked at those in the past. So we're looking very closely at operating cost trends as well. So the strategy there was a more incremental approach with an initial purchase of 4 zero emission buses, 8 hybrids to complete the 12 bus purchase for 2025. And so I think the reason,
Well, just before we start, I just want to make sure everyone sees what we are teeing up. Our ICT plan, which was unconstrained, fiscal unconstrained, calls for us to purchase 12 fuel cell buses in fiscal 25.
Okay, that's not, I had a question about that because that row is not on our chart in here.
yes.
It says 23.
This chart, this is taken straight from the CIP.
Right.
So the 23 is from the CIP.
Right,
We've
which
deferred
was
here.
8 and 4.
Yes.
And 23.
Right.
nothing in 25, the next bus purchase wasn't until 28. Was that, are we missing a row, or is that what the original plan was?
No, the FY 23 is as it was in the plan, and that rightmost column that says procurement status is
Right.
now, that one's in process, so that's what we are talking about today. Where it
Okay,
says
perfect.
FY 23,
Okay,
those are that was kind of the programming year when we're
Uh-huh.
trying to get the
Yeah.
funding together to actually authorize the purchase.
right, but we're planning to purchase them in actually in 2025, that's what we're
Correct.
talking about.
We-
Yes, it takes about a year to get all of the
Yeah,
outside funding
Okay.
together.
but just so, again, so our ICT plan calls for 12 fuel cell buses in 25. Our short range transit plan, which was more fiscally constrained, called for a mixed composition,
Okay.
mixed fleet of 4 fuel cell and 8 diesel hybrids. So we are at this point, we want to talk to you about both of this.
Okay,
Because 80% of the funding for these buses is coming from outside sources.
right,
So it's not, the other 20% comes from our own resources. We also need those same resources to operate and fuel the buses. So, you know, our dollars get constrained quickly, even though it's only 20% of the total.
right, and we adopted the short range transit plan after we adopted the, so this was what our plan, our most recent plan.
Correct.
Was to do 8 diesel hybrids and 4, fuel cell electric
Yes.
buses, which are not currently available, correct?
There are manufacturers for fuel cell buses,
Yeah.
just not in California.
So, yeah, I think there's a couple different threads here, because I think the ICT rollout plan makes a really strong affirmative statement that LAVTA is all in on hydrogen fuel cell technology.
Mhm.
We know that the industry needs to grow. We know it needs to bring costs down for all users. We know it's the right choice for the system we currently operate, for various reasons that the plan covered. It helps us when we go out for discretionary grants to say, here's our intention. We are well ahead of CARB's mandate,
Mhm.
both in the quantity of buses we intend to purchase and the timing.
Yeah.
We're ahead of schedule and we're beyond their mandate. That's great when you're going for discretionary funds to say, we're ready, we're capable. We would like some additional outside funding to make this happen. Because that is the story I think we bring to you, which is the money we have today isn't sufficient to cover a 12 fuel cell bus purchase. The difference per bus is almost $400,000 just in the purchase price of the bus itself. So, you know, you multiply that, the numbers add up quickly. And I think that's sort of the bottom line at the end of, at the bottom of page 2, that we would need an additional $3.2 million that we would have to cover from our own resources to cover that difference. What we surveying the landscape for discretionary outside funds, again, best dollar to spend is somebody else's dollar. I think we're still in a very good position to come in for additional grants this coming winter that align this desire to accelerate deployment beyond what's minimally required, to state the need that our facility needs also are substantial and need to harmonize these requests together at the same time, both for Atlantis and for the fleet. There's a couple of big discretionary state and federal funding opportunities coming forth this winter. We'd like to be able to show them our plans and say, we're ready to do this. If we are not successful in those grants, we may need to revert to an alternate plan where we kind of go with the resources we believe we have in hand today, which would enable us to do a smaller initial deployment of just 4 fuel cell electric buses. We have applied for these kinds of grant programs in the past, and we have been able to get, you know, be able to tell a story about who might manufacture those buses, and for, you know, because these are considered kind of pilot or innovative projects, the Federal Transit Administration's rules for how you procure and who can be a named partner are different from the usual way we buy buses with ordinary form of funds. So it enabled us to kind of do some more flexible things with manufacturers who may not be in the marketplace quite yet with this kind of bus to help develop that technology.
Basically, you're helping to fund their development because they've got existing purchase orders. And so they can put resources.
That's right. I mean, when we prepare these applications, whether it's to federal or state entities, we need to show that we're helping them accomplish their goals, right?
Yeah.
And that's they have that interest in growing the marketplace across the board right now. Everybody buying buses is facing high costs much higher costs than when projects and plans were put in place 3 to 5 years ago.
Mhm.
I'm sure this is true across a lot of areas of capital needs and projects, in facing many cities too, so it's no different in the world of buses. So, I think that kind of covers where our current thinking is in terms of where we've been recently with our plans, where we'd like to be come time for budget next year, and the actions I think staff can take in the meantime to help us deploy as much as we can, as quickly as we can, without jeopardizing too much of our precious internal resources by trying to maximize what we can get from outside agencies.
You did a great job of explaining. Let me see if I can boil it down. We had a plan in 2023, in 2025 now, that was going to be 12 fuel cell buses. And now we want to retain some fuel cell purchases, but probably not 12 of them. So if we do a 4-8 split, that will give us buses, probably your 8 hybrids will come pretty regularly from Gillig down the street maybe, since we're gonna go out for a bid, but you'll still have one foot in the hydrogen fuel cell market with 4 bus purchase.
I think it would enable us to stand up our infrastructure that we have under, basically practically in construction now with the hydrogen fuel cell, hydrogen fueling infrastructure we've won for Atlantis, and other things we're getting online to support the buses. It will help us get the 4 up and running.
Plus you'll be
Before, if you look at this chart, the rows that pique my interest is really in 20 and 29, when we're gonna have to get 40 buses, that's 2/3 of our fleet.
Yeah.
Switched.
And even though we're doing the work here to retrofit our maintenance space, they can only handle so many fuel cell buses. So at some point, we may need to, if we are not successful at grants to build out Atlantis, which I have all the faith in the world that we will be successful, we'll just need to do some analysis to figure out how many fuel cell buses we can actually safely maintain in 2 bays here.
And that was kind of my big question, sort of how does this work in parallel with Atlantis for fuel procurement, maintenance, refueling bays, we can't drive to Chevron. And
This will help us with hopefully grants for Atlantis.
Yeah, that is
it's
very much the intention. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is,
We need to have some,
yeah.
we need to have some in hand.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Why
do.
build Atlanta?
So is 4 the right number? My question is, if I think I understood you to say, we'd like to try for the 12.
Yes, we'd like to try.
And if we don't get those grants, then if we have to go out of our own pocket, then 4.
mhm.
And 8 diesel hybrids, why 4 and 8 instead of 6 and 6?
That's a very good question. The 4, goes back to when the Metropolitan Transportation Commission initially asked us what our bus purchase plans were. So the 4 was based on the CIP that was developed in the middle of last year. That number kind of came from earlier plans, and even older grants, when we thought maybe with one of our previous bus purchases, we could try a 0 emission. We just didn't find ourselves ready to really act on that, but we had always had some little special set aside for 4. So that was a request that MTC was willing to say yes to in terms of programming these federal formula funds for our replacement bus purchase. Say, for 4 of them, we'll let you spend an extra $400K per bus for 4. Over there at MTC, it's a big balancing act of every agency's need in a very constrained program. It's an iterative process.
If having more than 4 helps us show that we're willing to put our own skin in the game, compromising on 6 might show for the future grants that we're willing to go beyond what MTC is able to provide. Certainly, we wouldn't want to go to all 12, but maybe upping the ante a little bit, dipping into our own pockets a little bit for 2 more buses.
If we have the funds.
If we had to, down the line, if we think that, diesel keeps going up, if we really bet that hydrogen goes down, I mean, we don't have to make that decision until we figure out what the grant situation looks like, but if you're coming, we try for the grant for 12 and we don't get it, and then we're looking at, okay, what are we gonna do? then, we might want to reevaluate, is 4 the right number? Is 6 a better number? What's gonna get us better positioned down the road to be able to show, look, we're all in on this?
We would be applying for federal FTA loan now. We would know probably summertime. But I think back to your question, this is a big, we have to stitch everything together. We need to have a fallback plan, right? So we are going to be moving forward with constructing our hydrogen fueling station. We were lucky to receive TIRSIP money for that. So we are working on scoping out a hydrogen consultant, one of our on-call zero emissions bus consultants to help us with all the things we know nothing about related to hydrogen. And then the board will have a decision to make on sourcing the hydrogen. We'll have costs to present to you there. How green do you want it, given that we will be trucking it in for the foreseeable future? It is not GHG free, but those are conversations that we will have to have. And First Element, I would just say, is a local hydrogen distributor.
First element,
So,
how
yeah.
clever.
Of course, we'll have a competitive process, but that is a local, very local. We've learned one of the Bay Area transit properties trucks in their hydrogen from Southern California twice a week. So, again, not to throw shade, but it's, we will have that conversation.
ACT, and has been working on the discussion, at least as local hydrogen, creation.
Yes, and we are part of the ARCHES, the Alliance for Renewable Clean Hydrogen Energy Systems, I think is what it stands for. And the idea is to bring clean renewable hydrogen in Northern California and bring the cost down. So we have signed up for that.
And when does that get online?
That is a great question. The ARCHES was just awarded the U.S. Department of Energy grant, and how about I do a little research and I can come back in the executive director's report with an update there.
That'd be great.
So do you know what our current capacity would be for hydrogen buses? Like if we had infinite money to buy them, what's our capacity?
With here in this.
Currently? Yeah.
That we have 2 bays that we are, so I can get back to you on that. I don't know the exact number.
Yeah, so I mean, I
Maybe
guess
12.
not just here with like infrastructure, we have secured it and
Yeah.
then just still,
Yeah.
so.
It's the maintenance. The
Okay.
fueling station is a 15,000 gallon tank.
Oh, okay.
It won't support your full fleet, but it will support a lot of buses.
Okay.
But it is the maintenance here, having the safety, the ventilation, the alarms, and all of that.
Yeah, so I'd love to know what our fleet capacity would be.
Pardon?
What our current fleet capacity would be for hydrogen.
Yeah, I will find that. Yep.
Last question, if, for me, and then I'll come to the supervisor, if we have a delay in shipment for the hydrogen fuel cells, since they are such a new product, you have been running a reduced fleet of buses because of COVID and bus ridership, and changed some of the schedules. Would it be reasonable to think you could keep some of these buses beyond the 12 years, since they've been reduced in their usage for a period of time while we're waiting for the hydrogen buses, assuming they might be delayed?
That is something that other properties have looked at doing. I think this is a case where every agency that needs to buy buses is seeing higher costs than anticipated. They're all responding in different ways relative to what their needs are. So I think once the wheels in motion service changes are put into effect and we kind of have a new true up with our operating needs, this will probably all come back to you in your budget next year together. But on the side of our TDA funding, when it needs to support capital and operating needs at the same time, the peanut butter gets spread pretty thin, pretty fast.
I'm a little concerned about those hydrogen buses, even just the operation costs, since it's so much
Yeah,
greater.
and there's-
That if you go to 6 from 4 to 6 may be a significant increase in operating budget. Supervisor, questions, comments?
Just some comments. I'm very thankful for the report in terms of providing high level setting of direction. I think that keep doing what we're doing with the plan. I have no problems with the plan. I would just say, to the extent that we can be judicious with our dollars and use buses as long as practical, and delaying purchase of new buses where we can, until we find the grant money to do that, and otherwise spend as little of our own resources as needed. I would provide direction that I'm hoping that as much of the buses that we do buy can be procured locally, i.e. Gillig or similar. I know that they're struggling with how to build hydrogen buses themselves. Not struggling, but they're figuring it out, and that takes time. And then lastly, as it relates to production of hydrogen, Godspeed to us. Let's get in the production game as soon as we can. We know that we have AC Transit will be hopefully a purchaser if we can provide them excess hydrogen. But to be able to have it produced locally is super important to me. So it sounds like we are kind of in a strong alignment with those principles. And I look forward to the day that we do buy our first hydrogen bus, that it does have locally produced hydrogen, hopefully in it, and that we can celebrate that success. But I know it's not without hard work and attention to detail. So Christy and Jennifer, thank you very much for the report.
Okay, it looks like you're just looking for feedback that you have received.
One other question.
Sure.
Just a history question here. Why hydrogen versus electric?
Well, I wasn't here either, but I do know that there are.
I know.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. I have an answer, but go ahead.
The way this comes to me is that you can run the buses a lot longer on hydrogen. Electric is a shorter time, especially with the buses we have going to Walnut Creek. So to have all the fleet is much the same and homogenized, being able to take that hydrogen bus out longer. And then there's also, electric has a weight component that the hydrogen does not have. So all of those panels makes that bus heavier and it runs its battery down faster. So I remember if you.
I just want to say, well done. Yeah, the range issue is significantly.
Yeah, we would have also had to put en route charging,
Okay.
for some of our routes.
Yeah.
And it would have been a higher cost for that, for some of those routes.
It takes a lot longer too to charge a bus.
Yeah.
And it's not like go charging a Tesla.
Yeah,
It's a great question though.
yeah, I was curious.
I know, a history is important. You're just looking for feedback. I take that this is not going to go to the board.
I don't think this needs to go to the board. I think we'll bring obviously our budget and our grant, submissions to the board.
That's why I like to be on projects and services. This is where
Get all
fun
the,
things
get all
happen.
the good stuff here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Shared autonomous vehicle project grant.
All right, thank you. I'm going to take this one. This is an action item. This may be your last SAB item for some time. Thank you for your patience as we've been delivering updates to you. You will recall at our last Projects and Services Committee, staff presented to you the results of our request for information to understand what was available in the marketplace so that we could use our nearly $2.7 million in RM2 money to purchase vehicles. And we received one response and it was deemed non-responsive. So there really is nothing that we can buy right now that meets our requirements for the SAD project. And so last month, as you talked about this, I believe the committee generally agreed that the lack of available technology, in addition to the lack of operating funding, which was another critical piece in our moving this forward, that it was reasonable to consider closing out that project with an asterisk that let's continue to pursue grant funding or other opportunities where we might find a third-party funder to continue this work. So we have two active grants that are attached or support the SAD project, the SAD Phase 2 project. The first is an MTC IDEA grant. This was a grant received in partnership with the City of Dublin. This grant sunsets at the end of this calendar year and cannot be extended. So we've been working collaboratively with the City of Dublin staff and MTC staff on a proposed project closeout report. We just learned that MTC was comfortable with that today. So we will be working to close out that report, any lessons learned and whatnot. The bigger grant is our RM2 grant. This is a significant chunk of funding. It is about $2.7 million. And we have not spent any of this funding. So we are here today to ask for your concurrence on giving staff direction to pursue reprogramming the RM2 money to another eligible project. The project has to be in the 580 corridor, and it has to be a capital project to reduce congestion. Staff is very interested in upgrading our transit signal priority system to a cloud-based system, and that's something actually the City of Dublin engineers were also interested in. And so that concludes my report. We are, just to repeat, we are requesting that the committee direct staff to pursue reprogramming the remaining, or the SAV Phase 2 RM2 funding to another eligible project, contingent on the concurrence of our funding agencies. And one more note, we spoke with Alameda CTC staff about this, and they were in support of our recommendation as well. And I can take any questions.
Is it possible that, the, Double Boulevard Extension, LAVTA piece would be a qualifying project?
Can you speak to that?
Yes,
Thank you. We did bring that up.
we did discuss this with Alameda CTC staff because we thought the question might be asked. Their view, and I should clarify, they are technically under the RM2 legislation, they are the project sponsor for these funds. They have been supportive in delegating that to LAVTA to carry out the projects that conform to the RM2 requirements, but they are legally the project sponsors. Their view was that the construction phase of that project was farther out than desirable for these. RM2 was enacted by voters in 2004. RM3 was voted on a few years ago. Everyone's ready to close out RM2. That was the feedback we got from Alameda CTC.
3 days, fairly short term.
Yes, yeah, pretty shovel ready.
And then, the specific project, you mentioned signal alignment, but it's not been determined yet. Right now, staff will be researching what's approved, and then you'll come back to us, I assume, with.
Absolutely. We need to reach out to MTC. We wanted your direction to reach out to MTC to see if we can have a conversation.
And it would take a resolution of local support from this board to advance the project, so you would see it anyway. Sorry to.
Supervisor?
Yeah, I think Evan asked the question I was going to ask. So the replacement project is still work in progress, but it sounds like it has to do with could you explain at least a little bit more about it? Is it signal timing, or what is it that we want to do in replacement?
Sure, it is an upgrade of our transit signal priority system. So we have transit signal priority at 50 to 60 intersections throughout the Tri-Valley. They're in all 3 cities. They are on our rapid routes, so your 10R and your 30R. And it is not preemption, so it's not like a fire truck that has its lights on and gets a green light. What the system does, and this is just bear with me, it can extend a green or shorten a red light if conditions are met when the bus is approaching, if the bus is not on time. So the systems have evolved. We were actually one of the early adopters of the infrared system, where a bus actually sends a signal to the traffic signal. And again, if conditions are right, that red would be shortened or that green would be extended. We upgraded to a GPS-based system in 2019, which took away that infrared line of sight requirement and then just used the bus's location to determine, is this bus running late and should it be asking for this light to be extended or shortened? And now the technology, or the TSP providers or vendors, are moving to cloud-based. 2CTA, Contra Costa County, just awarded a cloud-based TSP system. I demoed one at Samtrans, and the effectiveness of these systems and the data that you get from them are just far and away what you get today. For us to know if our TSP is working, we actually have to hire someone to go out to a cabinet and pull data. And so, we've also been told, or our vendor for our GPS-based system has indicated they will not be supporting the system beyond our 5-year term, which will expire this summer. So we are in a position where we will need to look at a different solution. This is also something MTC is very interested in. They have funding from the transit action plan coming out of the Blue Ribbon Task Force for a transit signal priority plan. They're offering technical assistance. So I think there will be funding coming from the region to support this type. So I'm sorry, David, that was a long
Great.
answer.
I'm fully supportive. I hope that we can develop metrics that say not just how many signals will update by a certain time frame, but rather that we also think about that this should have the effect of increasing on-time arrival or speeding up our buses to be more efficient, or some true performance metric like that, because that's why we would want to upgrade the signals and why we would want to spend the money. So if we can tie it back to some expectation of that, we're not just spending the money to upgrade signals, but we're doing that to increase efficiency or on-time arrivals or something like that. But I'm sure we're planning to do that. But otherwise, very supportive. I'll shed a tear over the SAB project at some point, but it was a good try, and I'm glad we did it. And I think we got some learnings, and I wish that our vendors were a little stronger, as we hoped they would be. We've had problems with them, and all of that. We don't need to get into the history of that. SAB will happen at some point in our future. I don't know when, but we were on the cutting edge at one point. So I thank you all for doing that.
Yeah, I agree. We were so excited to be on the cutting edge of about a new vehicle transportation. And then when you had to have a personnel on board, that sort of eliminated the whole autonomous idea. But it did put LAVTA at the front of calendars, awards. We got lots of press and lots of accolades for that.
I still think it's the future of first mile, last mile, but when there's nobody going to and from between BART and office parks or dense
But
shopping
it's so much
centers
more
and things.
complex than that, though.
No, I understand, but
So
there's,
if I could have the floor.
yeah.
So that's thanks. Question about signal alignment, obviously, is where you're directing your concept for. Is there any other projects that's a fall or a backup for?
Absolutely. At the advice of our Alameda CCC colleagues, they encourage us to look at passenger amenities and bus stop improvements. So a chunk of this RM2 money was used for the rapid stop improvements. And so they thought that it would be maybe an easier sell to MTC if we stayed with the original kind of grant purpose. So we will be looking at that. And they had one more suggestion, but I can't recall what it was. So I'll have to look in my notes.
So we've seen the increase in paratransit ridership dramatically increase. It's still vehicles on the road. As we look for these dramatic increases, as well as the partnership with 3CTA, we're just trying to throw ideas out because it's a little surprising to me that 2.7 million will that seems like a lot of money for signal alignment.
It could buy a lot of signals for many years. It could.
But you said moving it to cloud-based, so
Yeah,
I'm thinking
yeah.
it's mostly software
Yeah.
instead of hardware.
Yeah, you're right. And it can't be used for, I think it can't be used for operating money. So for paratransit, we would be limited to purchasing capital equipment.
Vehicle.
Yeah, and so that's always the trick, is finding the operating.
Hydrogen. Okay, all right, just wanted, sorry, floor
No,
back
that's
to you.
okay. I was just saying that, that the timing, not just from the vehicle producers, but the timing of the rapid shift in people not being in the office 5 days a week and people not taking BART currently, was a big factor in the SAB, derailment, for lack of a better word. I do think that eventually that would be a project we would want to move forward with, when the pendulum swings back the other way and the manufacturers catch up. But to your point, it's not super helpful if there has to be a operator on board.
There was
I think
many
all of those
challenges.
things, yeah, I think all of those things have to catch up. A question on the signal, priority. In addition to software, does there have to be conduit run to some of these signals? Do we know what that would entail at this point?
I don't know yet, I just know, I mean, the systems I'm familiar with, require the signals to be connected at a certain level. So, I will absolutely do more research there, I'm getting cost estimates together and understanding what we could purchase if we were to go down this path. But at Samtrans, when we demoed one solution, there was very little capital equipment required, there was no conduit needed, and luckily our buses are connected at such a high frequency, they're pinged pretty often, that is sufficient for these technology vendors to use for the cloud-based TSD, so.
My point is, I wouldn't want us to be spending a lot of our money running conduit that the cities really ought to be doing.
Yeah.
I would rather that if it was a choice between that and upgrading our stops, for example, or getting a couple of transit vans if we need them for paratransit, I would rather us do that than spending our money on something that the cities probably have in their long-term capital budgets.
And that a little bit off the wall question, we have a parking structure that's under construction in Dublin that is a LAVTA partner. Is that going to come in? Does it need any extra money, and could it be a parking lot or something like that? Again, getting vehicles off the road.
That garage, that's my understanding, is scheduled to be completed next May. The
That would be a
LAVTA.
small ribbon cutting.
The LAVTA sponsor,
No ribbon.
the LAVTA sponsored portion of the construction costs is about at the end. So they're going to finish the project out with non-LAVTA resources.
Okay.
And when I say LAVTA, it's
Our
our
grant.
pass-through money from the state. It's not our,
Not our money.
yeah. So if they have issues on the cost side, we will stand by patiently and wait for them to
They'll find
finish the
money.
garage.
Okay.
And part of the reason, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't part of the reason that LAFTA was sponsoring that was so that we could park our SAVs there?
The principal reason LAVTA, I'm sorry. if I-
No, please.
The principal reason I understood LAVTA was the project sponsor for that is because the money that funded it is from the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, and LAVTA was the only eligible recipient. The implementing agency, which is County of Alameda, is not eligible to receive the funding directly, so we are truly a pass-through for those funds, and then the rest of the funding to complete the garage is coming in from other sources, so.
And Bart refused to be the organizer for increased parking, because it was really
Yes,
to
right,
facilitate
yes.
increased parking.
Because they have
at
a
BART.
philosophy about parking and they intentionally underpark because they want people to not drive the.
Wanted
BART
to pay
for
money.
Reasons
to
I don't
park there.
quite understand, but also, am I misremembering part of the design is to have two SAVs?
There are SAV stalls and chargers that are in the design that can be phased in later.
Yeah, no, that's for our reserve, as a thank you to us for sponsoring the project. We now have that space reserved for our future use. For whenever these little electric vehicles will be first last miling around the station.
One thing we might wanna look at is, smaller coach style bus. I think this is a capital money. Is there a coach style bus that we want to pilot for areas that we know that we are underserving? West Dublin, for example, where instead of running a 40-foot bus, we could be running these smaller coach style buses that we could run. I mean, I know we still have a driver shortage, but where we could do smaller routes more frequently and see if that moves the needle on ridership. If you had a smaller, more frequent route that just did a loop in downtown Pleasanton, in downtown Livermore, in downtown Dublin, what would that look like as far as ridership goes? We want to be very intentional, but if this is money that we haven't seen and it's for congestion, if we could get some cars out of downtowns at key times of day, maybe Friday and Saturday evenings when people are going to downtown places or other key particular times. This might be the perfect opportunity to buy some shorter coaches, since we will have a place to park them, since there won't be SAVs in those stalls.
It's a very interesting idea, because we've seen Danville, Walnut Creek has a city bus, but I've always thought of them as city buses instead of LAVTA buses, because there's no fare boxes on those, they're free, free shuttle buses to take you from the parking structure, let's say, to the downtown, so interesting. It's really, if you find some money.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I think the operating funding is the big
Sure.
challenge. I mean, the buses are one thing, but the operating funding.
Yeah.
I remain committed to looking at microtransit, as a potential solution for West Dublin in particular. This committee will get, a recommendation for your Go Tri-Valley Uber Lyft program here in a few months. Staff are working on that analysis, and that could be something for us to think about, especially as we are restoring routes in certain areas, but
I still would like to see us looking into the idea or researching the idea of smaller buses on shorter loop routes. Maybe even to eliminating some of the routes that only run every hour or two. Instead of running a much larger route that doesn't go to where people wanna go. Doing smaller loop routes.
We have talked about that on, I know, sorry for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
11-year look back, but they're called cutaways, and we had looked at cutaways before. And LAVTA at the time always said, we want one standardized bus. It's a big expense to have two models. And even though you'll have a different engine type as you're transitioning over, that was always the response. But the logic is lower fuel costs, plenty of capacity. But if you take one of the cutaways and you go, okay, we need you over at Dublin High School, so it's a whole different set of scheduling, but it makes so much sense to reduce your fuel consumption, have a smaller bus, more adept in making turns.
and we were I don't want to go too off agenda, but I was speaking with our long-range transit plan consultant, who is looking at the 10-year conceptual network. We were talking about Stone Ridge Mall redevelopment, talking about South Front Station. We talked about circulator routes. We talked about smaller vehicles. We talked about SAVs. So, I think we will continue to look into that, and we could do some analysis for you to see what the expected ridership difference might be if we did some smaller frequent loops.
Only if it increases ridership.
Yeah.
Right, yes, of
Definitely, yeah.
course, only if it.
And I do think there's something to be said, and I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, the cute branded vehicles that get assigned to the downtown Walnut Creeks or Dublin or Pleasanton, that might be something the community gets really excited about. It's a nightmare from a fleet management perspective and dispatching, but that's something I think we could definitely think about.
Well, I don't know that necessarily we have to brand them for the individual cities, but if we, brand them as Tri-Valley's downtown.
Yeah,
I mean, then you could run them from any one of them, but the smaller ones could be branded as, Wheels does downtown, or, something along those lines, so that you don't have that dispatch nightmare. But that it still allows, because we don't have such a huge area that we cover, we only covered Livermore, Pleasanton, Dublin, right?
Remember we were gonna rebrand, we kind of tried all those new names, whatever it was, Trigo, and then people said, sounds like a disease.
No.
All right.
It could be interesting to pilot something
I
like that.
I think it's very out of box, nice idea.
Has
there been a motion made? Because I'll make it if not.
No, we're just directing staff. Okay, yes, we're gonna keep moving along here.
It's an action item, right? We need to take an action.
I was just saying LA had, Dash down in LA, which was a cool version of it for downtown.
Dash, yeah.
Great, I took it all the time when I was in school there.
Okay, it does say direct staff to pursue programming, so you would like a motion, and we have one made by Supervisor Halbert, do we have seconds? Okay, motion made and seconded, you figured out who said it first. Okay, roll call.
Director Brandon, Director Josie, Chair Howard,
Aye.
Vice Chair Brown,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you. A preview of upcoming Projects and Services Committee agenda items.
Well, we won't ask you to meet on Christmas, and you will be canceling your December 25th committee meeting. And then, as I mentioned, in January, we are looking to bring you recommendations for your Go Tri-Valley program. tentative, bringing you the long range transit plan, that may get bumped to February. And then, in February, we are looking at your annual Valorant customer satisfaction survey, which also may get bumped to March, so we will keep you updated. And I can take any questions.
Cool. Questions? I see none. Okay, thank you very much. Our next meeting date will not be December 25th. So we're gonna move it out to January. And that, any last 1 minute comments? This meeting's adjourned. Under an hour.
January 22nd.